What really works when it comes to de-escalating anxious, hostile, or challenging behavior? Our free guide, CPI's Top 10 De-Escalation Tips, is filled with effective strategies to help you stay calm and manage your own response so you can handle challenging questions, set limits, and diffuse challenging behaviors before they escalate. To get the guide, enter cpisite.com/EP51 in your browser. That's cpisite.com/EP51, and we'll send you the guide for your trouble. If you're listening on YouTube, just click the free resource link below.
Welcome to Unrestrained, the podcast series from CPI. Here you can enjoy conversations where professionals on all sides of crisis and behavior management relax and open up about themselves, their workplace, and their clients. You'll get the latest tips and trends from the best in the business, so tune in often to integrate their experiences with your own. Hello and welcome to Unrestrained, a CPI podcast series. This is your host, Terry Vittone, and today I'm joined by Corey Boney. She develops curriculum for Florida's Marion County School District through the Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services, or ESE, and Courtney Wire, a Senior Implementation Manager with CPI. Hello and welcome, Corey and Courtney.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Corey Boney has been in special education for 16 years. She taught for her first 5 years and then moved into a leadership role as a school-based exceptional education and student services specialist, or ESE. Corey is now an ESE coordinator in Marion County, motivating students to set and achieve their goals in order to keep their hope and fulfill their dreams. She has been a CPI certified instructor since 2009, and today we're going to talk about how high rates of student restraint and seclusion in the district led to a training initiative spearheaded by Corey and Courtney, and the remarkable results they have achieved to date. All right, then let's begin. Corey, could you describe the situation in place in Marion County Schools that precipitated your involvement in the district and ultimately to committing to providing CPI training to 6,000 district staffers?
Sure. So 2 years ago, our restraints were 5 times the state average, and our seclusions were 10 times the state average. So we recognized that we needed to make a change to reduce those numbers and help our students stay safe in a better way.
So you face this challenge of designing and producing a process to manage the training of 6,000 people.
But we wanted to find something that would address the mind shift change that we needed to make. So we were being very reactive to student behavior rather than being proactive and getting ahead of the behavior, which we knew CPI would do with its nonviolent crisis intervention training. So that was one thing that we were looking for. And then we also knew we needed to reach a large number of people. So we wanted to have a team that would work with us to be able to have different levels of training for our different levels of staff here within the district. So the blended training option was the right fit for us because we were able to have that online piece available to everybody in our district, from custodians, paint workers, all the way up to the superintendent. That way we had that common language and vocabulary related to behavior, no matter who you spoke to throughout the district. And then we were able to provide a trainer on each campus to train a crisis team to be the ones that were interacting and deciding when a restraint or seclusion was appropriate if they were not able to verbally de-escalate that student in another way. And now we're starting to roll out the middle level where you get the physical personal safety piece, but not necessarily going into restrained students with some of our teachers and staff that are in those more intensive classrooms. So they're getting some face-to-face time on top of their online modules, but they're not necessarily part of that crisis team.
I see. So how many campuses are you training on?
We have 52 campuses.
Wow. And so are all 6,000 people coming back for a classroom portion?
No.
Okay. And so how many people got the blended learning as just their CPI training?
So we have about 10 people on each campus that started out getting the full classroom portion in addition to the online. And then we're adding to that if they're in a classroom that having more instances with student physical aggression.
Okay.
So we started out with about 500, and we're adding to that at this point.
All right. Well, let's talk about now. This is a question for both you, Corey and Courtney. Let's talk about how your collaboration took shape. So now you're the beginning process. You're looking at these high rates of restraint and seclusion. You got 6,000 people to train on these many campuses, and you, Corey and Courtney, meet and you start to collaborate. Talk about how that developed and how you developed a strategic plan and went about implementation.
Corey, you want to start that one, or would you like me to start that one?
I'll let you start.
Okay. So from my perspective, once the decision had been made to go with CPI for this Safe School initiative, that's when I was brought in by the business development director, who is Danielle Wolf. She pulled me in so that Corey and I could really start planning the logistics of everything, right? And so we had those conversations about the goal dates for having certified instructors trained, the goal dates for having the staff trained, which obviously was going to be the bulk of the project, talking about risk levels and what that entailed in terms of timing needed for staff training, and then really, again, just focusing on how we can make this delivery method work of the nonviolent crisis intervention. Corey and I have said this a couple times, but Corey was very much my coworker and my colleague through this process. Definitely the success of it is attributed to the fact that we were able to be in constant communication with each other, both before in those initial planning conversations, as well as throughout the initial rollout, and then, as the bulk of the staff started receiving their training. So a lot of communication goes into that. We mirrored the commitment on either side, making sure we were both accessible to each other, whether we needed to do that via email, phone, quick conference. Just always having accessibility to that other side. And I joke, but it's actually the truth. And still to this day, when I go to email anyone whose name starts with a C, my email automatically populates Corey. It just assumes that's who I'm going to be reaching out to.
Yeah, and mine pops up with Courtney as well, and that constant communication is definitely the key. Anytime a problem started to pop up, she was right there to be able to help me come up with a plan to solve it and work through it, because, two heads are definitely better than one when you're trying to do a rollout as massive as this was, and to have all the moving parts work fluidly rather than getting gummed up in the works.
And because the task was so massive, let's talk next about the specifics of training implementation, how they were developed, your overall timeline, and the things that you had. I know you had a kickoff day and email campaigns, how-to tutorials, and so let's talk about that initial planning and the day-to-day challenges. Kind of walk us through how that went.
So we started with a kickoff day where we met with our principals, assistant principals, and deans, because they would be the heart of those crisis teams. And so we wanted them to be excited and deliver the right message to their staff about this. We wanted it to be well received. So we fed them, and as they were enjoying a wonderful lunch, we talked to them about the intent and purpose behind this change. And then we sent out some emails letting them know that this was coming before we flooded the staff with their invitation to join the online community of CPI. And that was fairly well received. We quickly realized that we needed some how-to tutorials because people's computer skills were at different levels, and Courtney was very helpful and able to get those developed quickly so that we could get those out. And the team of trainers at each site was definitely helpful to me in being able to give that face-to-face level of assistance of getting people onto the computers if they needed more than just a step-by-step tutorial. So we had all of those levels going at once. So for me, the biggest challenge was making sure the communication was fluid and ongoing, and that we had all those different levels of support in place. Next year will be much better because those will all be in place to start with rather than trying to develop them as we go, because we didn't foresee some of those things coming up.
Yeah, and just to really echo that, from our perspective, we began this whole conversation with a mutual timeline. And that mutual timeline was really a foundation of where we knew kind of in a linear way where we needed to go. But as you build anything, you have to change it along the way. There are a variety of things that come up. that you don't always foresee, as Corey mentioned. And so, you begin with this commitment on everyone's level, both sides, both teams. You set those goal dates, you communicate, as Corey had mentioned. And for the CPI side, we wanted to make sure that we equipped them with stuff for a drip campaign, right? Information that would get people excited about this, flyers and guidance documents and whatever could be beneficial to the certified instructors, to the staff that were going to receive this. Corey did a phenomenal job. The Marion team did a phenomenal job, really, of dedicating the time necessary to something this big, both in the planning stages as well as having that kickoff meeting, intentionally spending time before everyone just were blindsided by, suddenly this blended learning class they had to take. They knew it was coming and they knew why it was coming. And then also on the CPI side, we had to make sure that we communicated internally to our other departments. We have many processes already in place, but we knew that the sheer size of Marion and the surge that would come in when everyone was given those blended learning materials all at once, that would require kind of all hands on deck on our side.
Corey, how would you rate the overall receptivity? I mean, was the problem widely acknowledged, and was the training then a welcome thing, or did you face any kind of a battle with that, or were people kind of relieved that finally some training was coming in to deal with these high rates of restraint and seclusion that you were experiencing in Marion?
So there was a mixture of feedback in the beginning. Some were right on board and gung-ho to jump into something new, and then there was some holdouts. But once people got into it and started taking it, every bit of feedback I got was positive about, wow, this is helpful. This is going to make a difference. Not just in school with the children I work with, but I can use this at home in my real life as well.
Great. Now, Courtney, on a broader organizational participation that was required within CPI, I know you told me that a lot of people were called into this. How were the internal teams coordinated and directed? In our interview, I know you talked about the daily triage of incoming questions, and it sounds very urgent and hectic. Could you kind of set that scene for us?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So the initial coordination involved, all of the departments, several interdepartmental meetings to talk about logistics. As I mentioned, processes have been in place for 38 years to support all the customers out there, but we knew that this would be a surge and that they had a deadline. Right? They wanted their staff trained and they needed their staff trained, the majority of them trained by the end of last year.
So the window for 6,000 is how long exactly?
Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the window was about September through December.
Wow.
Was that correct?
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
intensive.
So, a lot of planning, but then also a lot of support. And, during those conversations, we talked about who was going to need to be involved on our side, how we were going to make sure that all of the Marion needs that triaged in through me then got to the appropriate departments. As we began the process, we kind of developed little subgroups who would support Marion. IT is a great example of that. They were phenomenal, and I believe that they would answer support tickets from Marion, within a 24-hour period, if not shorter. And so everybody was just on board and aware that it was coming. So while that daily support filtered through me, that's more for project management and capturing the data. The real support came from all those other departments. Corey, you hit it on the head, and it's true. People have different comfort levels with technology, and resistance is very natural when you bring in something new, even if it's something great. It is absolutely natural for people to say, wait a minute, I don't know that I'm comfortable with this change. And so because of all the communication and preparation that happened on Corey's end, we were then able to walk alongside all the certified instructors and participants who called in or emailed in on our side and just help them through that change management and help them through whatever technology hiccups they were having.
Great. Just sounds like a lot of volume going through there with so many participants.
It's a good way to describe it.
Right, right. And did you find yourself, as the process went through, kind of streamlining and getting more people kind of used to the day-to-day demands that were going to be put on them?
Yeah. Definitely. And it was exciting to also hear back from a variety of departments on pretty much a weekly basis. We have a phenomenal support services team and training department who supports the instructor calls, and I would get weekly reports that I could then funnel that information to Corey, and we could have a really good feedback loop in terms of where people were having issues, how we could solve them so that no other people had the same issue. That goes back to the kind of guidance documents we started building along the way to say, hey, if a couple people have this question, that means more people have this question. So let's proactively get there.
So you developed some confidence and sort of momentum in the process as you went along?
Yeah, absolutely. And, a huge part of that is just knowing that on the Marion side, the Marion team was doing all that they needed to do to make sure it continued on there.
Well, let's cut to the question here and talk about some of the really astonishing results to date in the reduction of restraint and seclusion in Marion County School Districts, and maybe some changes to the overall culture. Corey, if you could take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so this is very exciting. There's been a definite mind shift in our district. We have found a better way to work with our students and keep this safe. We're being less reactive and being much more proactive with our students. And our seclusions have reduced by more than 90% overall in the district. We might have one in an entire month now, or zero. Last month, I believe we had zero. And then our restraints have consistently been down 75% the last 3 months over last year. So we are very excited about those results. But we do know we still have work to do. So, we're already starting to make plans for next year.
Speaking of, the next question I had was, first of all, those are absolutely remarkable and really encouraging results. And what a turnaround indeed. And to feel that it has to reach to a cultural level to have that sustained impact and that dramatic of an impact. So what is the strategic plan for year two? As Courtney has told me, there's a year two. And what do you hope to have in place at the end of year two that you don't have now?
So we hope to have more training for our classroom teachers. As we look at our data and problem solve through that, we're noticing that our students with autism tend to be the ones that are having physical aggression that's resulting in the restraint and seclusions most often. So we are hoping to pilot some of the autism training that is available and provide that then to our schools that have some specialized units for students with autism. And then we also want to we have a specialized behavior school that we're hoping to work with more closely and help them just become more comfortable and more confident with their skills as they transition to the new program.
I see. And so are you guys at 100% trained right now?
We are almost there. I have just a few holdouts that are still getting done. All of our crisis teams are in place at all 52 school sites, and I have a few staff members that are wrapping up their training, their online training at this point, and getting their points into our certification system.
Well, congratulations. I understand that Corey, that other Florida school districts have been calling Marion County for advice about how they can implement similar training initiatives, and I'm wondering if you could talk about what you tell them.
So I am willing to share our learning experience with everybody so that maybe they don't have to go through some of the bumps in the road that we went through. So I definitely brag about CPI and their fabulous team because they have been extremely helpful, and we could not have gotten to where we are without them and their support. And really, it's the mindset that the staff has made, and it's through the training. The training has really, it lends itself to bring you around to realize that when you reflect on yourself, when you're being reactive, to when you can be proactive and really get in front of that behavior and interrupt that sequence to help the students make a different choice along the way and not get to that risk behavior.
I see. Courtney, please.
And I would just like to echo back as well. Part of the reason that this has been so successful, while the training, is tried and true, and we know that it will help bring people to that mindset and make that culture shift, we also know that when you have an initiative like this coming in, and really when you have anything new coming into an organization, if you don't have the leadership who is willing to put in the time and the leadership who says, I'm going to own this and I'm going to put in the energy and the resources necessary to make this happen. When you don't have that, we tend to see that the training can come back, but it doesn't really go anywhere, right? That intrinsic culture shift doesn't happen. So because you guys, Corey, were so committed and so passionate about this is happening, we're gonna go through the bumps of change management together. Because that commitment was there, they never gave up, right? They put in that time and they kept moving it forward the entire way. And so that is why that's successful.
Well said.
Yes, this was a true partnership from the beginning.
Excellent. When it was first introduced, I know that, Corey, you had known about the program or been a trainer since 2009. Was your administration familiar with CPI? I mean, was there anything uphill about the initial sell of this is the resource that we need to address this problem?
There were very few administrators in Marion County that knew about CPI intimately. They had heard of it, but they were trusting in the fact that the data spoke for itself, that we needed a change. And CPI's history and research also spoke for itself, that this could bring us a change. I don't think anybody, including myself, expected the change to happen so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We're very excited about that, and we're hoping to continue with that positive change and also continue to look within our data and make sure that we're still making good choices in all areas for our students in relation to discipline.
Excellent. Thank you. Courtney, any last thoughts today?
No, this has just been a joy. It's been very, very rewarding to see you guys go through this journey, Corey.
Well, great. Thank you both. My guests today have been Corey Boney. She is an ESE specialist with Florida's Marion County School District, and Courtney Wire. She is a senior implementation manager with CPI. Thank you both very much for talking with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for joining us today on Unrestrained. Tune in again soon for another interview with an expert in behavior management. Until then, this is your host, Terry Vittone, hoping your intention is prevention.